on Howard Fineman, senior Washington correspondent for Newsweek magazine, whose book, The 13 American Arguments, has just been released in paperback. Howard, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
If, as Cy Hersh alleges here, the former vice president, and a covert assassination ring operated without talking to the CIA, how exactly would the CIA be in the position to call Mr. Hersh's reporting utter nonsense?
Well, moreover, Keith, if there in fact is such a thing as Seymour Hersh's reporting seems to indicate, and the CIA was kept in the dark about it, the last thing they would want to do right now is admit it. So either way, they don't have an interest in confirming, no matter what they know at this point. In checking around in the intelligence community today, I can say this: Seymour Hersh is somebody they respect. They don't always trust. But they put it this way, as one of them said to me, look, I don't know anything about this specifically at all, but I wouldn't dismiss what Cy Hersh is saying without checking carefully. That's their backhanded way of saying it's worth looking into for sure.
Presumably the second half of his allegations, which was that the CIA was involved significantly in domestic operations in the last 8 years, that would be something somebody in the CIA probably could deny with some degree of credibility. But as to the other thing, just because we might not be surprised by what Mr. Hersh is alleging, I mean, people who look at Dick Cheney would say, well, yeah, that sounds plausible if it isn't actually true. Should that make this revelation any less shocking, or if true, any less egregious and essentially terrifying to the nature of the democracy?
Well, depressing is another word I would use, and infuriating if it pans out, if when Cy's book comes out it's all there, because it would be of a piece with the picture that's emerging. We became what we beheld, to use a phrase from a great movie called The Untouchables, and I think it's clear in the days right after 9/11 that especially Vice President Cheney, and he managed to convince George W. Bush, who maybe didn't need a whole lot of convincing, that secrecy and really lawlessness was the way to go in the early days. And rather than focus on catching Osama bin Laden, to use another phrase, they didn't let a good crisis go to waste. And they used the atmosphere of crisis after 9/11 for all kinds of arrogations of power, accumulating power in the executive and really within the vice president's office in a way that we haven't seen outside of declared wartime, and even there with more strictures than were the case here.
Could this report, or report of a report, since he doesn't have anything on this yet other than his allegation, could it possibly put some muscle, some steam behind the Truth Commission that Senator Leahy is calling for, but a Truth Commission that would allow for the necessity of prosecutions? Because if this is true, you have to prosecute this. There's no way around this. Yeah.
Yeah, this would be even beyond the powers, I think, of the Commission of Inquiry that Senator Patrick Leahy is talking about. I talked with one of his aides a little earlier. Their point of view is basically, look, not that many people have signed on to Senator Leahy's call for a Commission of Inquiry, but one other shoe dropping, one other big proven allegation, strong allegation, and members of the Senate are going to come running to Leahy to sign on. This could be that thing, depending on how much it pans out. I checked with Senator Russ Feingold's office. He would be one of the people out there pounding on his desk on the Senate floor. He hasn't done it yet. I think people want to look and see what Cy Hersh has around this topic. But one more really strong series of allegations, like those OLC, those Justice Department memos that came out the other week. Another one like that, I think you're going to see a lot of senators wanting to join Senator Leahy's side on this.
And what about the Obama administration and response to this? Because the way Cy Hersh talked about the Joint Special Operations Command and the way the New York Times did in referencing it the other day, they both used the present tense. If this is still in existence, are we going to have to see some sort of cleaning out of the stables inside this administration to just say, again, like the Justice Department memos you just referenced, these things have to be put out there right now by President Obama?
Well, I think they're undergoing a complete review of all of the intelligence apparatus within the executive branch. Some people know a lot about what they're looking at; other people don't. General Jones inside at the National Security Council does. Leon Panetta, the new CIA director, doesn't that much. But yeah. Don't forget that Obama has not ruled out completely the use of some tactics like rendition. But I guarantee you that what he's going to do is going to be about law and not secrecy if he can avoid it.
Howard Fineman of MSNBC and Newsweek. As always, Howard, great thanks. For more on the legal questions raised by Seymour Hersh's reporting, let's turn to John Dean, White House counsel under Richard Nixon, FindLaw.com columnist and author of both Worse Than Watergate and Broken Government. John, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
First and foremost, let's begin with the executive order that I quoted at the beginning from President Ford that banned U.S. involvement in political assassinations. If that is the case, wouldn't an executive assassination ring that reported directly to the Vice President's office be on the face of it illegal, and might it also be on the face of it a war crime?
Well, clearly fighting terrorism is not dealing in tiddlywinks. We want our government to deal with the most effective tools they have, but they also have to be legal. The executive order really is nothing more than direction to the executive branch, and the president's the only one who you can even argue might have the authority to engage in assassinations. It's an unresolved question, so it's potentially a war crime, it's potentially just outright murder, and it could clearly be in violation of the Ford executive order.
Last summer, writing about the Joint Special Operations Command, Cy Hersh described a Bush administration mindset that posited that the president could not keep covert CIA operations free of congressional interference or oversight, but he could do that with clandestine military activities. So they then claimed that everything secret was military, not CIA. Is there legal merit to that argument, and if so, what is it?
Well, it's a thin argument. It kind of reminded me, when I heard it, of Nixon's claim that when he was paying hush money, he was really funding a humanitarian defense fund for the Watergate burglars. I'm not sure it works. It's an argument. It is nothing more, Keith.
Does it explain, though? I mean, does that mindset explain the Bush administration's persistent devaluation of the CIA into not much more than a public relations firm that it would manipulate? I mean, all the intelligence was moved under the control of, if not necessarily the Vice President's office. When it wasn't there, it would go to Donald Rumsfeld's office at the Pentagon. They really kind of neutered the CIA.
Well, there's no question they did that. This is a very interesting potential as further explanation as to why they might do that. We've got to remember, however, the CIA has maintained a clear covert operative entity inside of its operations. So from the intelligence standpoint, I can understand why they wanted to neuter it. From an operational standpoint, I'm not quite sure, because a lot of the people they hire come from this special operations unit in the military. So I think that it's an interesting argument. I'm not sure it's the full one.
The second part of the I guess it was a Hersh, essentially a slip by Cy Hersh, saying that Central Intelligence had been heavily involved in domestic spying in the Bush administration. That's clearly, we've been through this before, right? That has been clearly defined as utterly illegal.
That is, by statute, that is illegal. There's no question about that. The CIA is well aware of it. Every CIA director is pinned down on that question when he goes through a confirmation proceeding. So I don't think there's any question that's illegal, and would be quite shocking if they were engaging in the sort of things that Cy suggests.
What does this suggest to you as the remedy? Are we again at that point where the minimum standard is a truth investigation, a truth committee or commission with the prospect at least of prosecutions, that, in other words, not handing out immunity like it was candy?
Well, I think that's this is pretty serious stuff, Keith, obviously. Yeah. And I think that Cy is a highly reliable reporter. He doesn't throw things out unless there's some basis in fact for this sort of thing. He's written around this subject. There's quite a bit actually out on the record already about Rumsfeld authorizing assassinations. So I think that this is something that the Congress probably should get into, and I'm not sure a truth commission would necessarily do it. So I suspect the intelligence committees, if they haven't already looked, will look.
Speaking of looking, nobody's come up with a roster of possible people to whom he was referring, the victims of this. Have we seen anything like that? Have you seen anything like that?
In some of Cy's writings, he said as many as 10 different countries had been targeted for special ops activities, and this could indeed run the gamut. So I don't know that we have a target, and maybe that's what is the bombshell in his book.
Well, we'll have to take a look back through about 7 years worth of news. John Dean, author of Worse Than Watergate and Broken Government, as always, thanks so much for your perspective tonight, John.
Thank you, Keith.
So, where does the moral flexibility implied by a Cheney death squad story come from? No politician could spring fully grown from the ground dreaming of secret international assassination rings, not even Dick Cheney. The answer might lie in another story tonight. It turns out that 2 weeks ago, the embattled